Now, after that, let's talk quickly about dual consoles. Mentioned it earlier. Now, why would you want to do dual consoles with the X32? Couple of reasons. The biggest and common one is if you get fed up with live stream, or you're choosing not to do a broadcast mix with a DAW. Yes, DAWs are functionality a lot more fluent. You get plugins and stuff like that, but some churches want physical. If you're going to do physical with two X32s, by the way, this can mix match. Your front of house could be an X32 rack and live stream could be a compact or a full size. Doesn't care, doesn't matter. You can even throw an M32 into one of the positions. It does not matter. What we're about to show for routing is what does matter, is how you link everything between each other. But again, you may want to have one console dedicated to front of house, one console dedicated to broadcast if you don't like live stream mixing from a bus, or you just want better control. Because I did not mention this in the bus mix. I was waiting until now. In a live stream via bus, yes, if it's pre-fader, you have full mix control, as in fader positions and how loud one source is compared to another. You do not, however, have different gate dynamics or EQ control. It is the same as what's going to the main left-right. You cannot change that. However, if you have a secondary console, you now have a full set of channel processing because it is different channels. You're doing a digital split via AES. You can EQ differently. You can do different gating compression ratios for your live stream specifically. That is where a broadcast console comes in specified. Monitor console. I'll briefly touch why you would want to do that. The routing is going to be the same. Why you wouldn't want to do that? The in-ears, as I was talking about earlier. If on a single console you were to use all mix buses, you would not have FX buses for send return. So typically, we'll go back and look at them real quick. You have 12 mix buses you can play around with on your front of house console. Which in most cases, that's more than enough, people. But if you need stereo, and have to have stereo, then this is not enough for you. You can link a second console into your system and have it be your monitor-only console. Then you don't need the FX technically. Because for in-ears, a lot of people don't want FX. Singers excluded. Then you could have 8 in-ear mixes on a console. Technically 9. Here's why I say technically 9. You have 16 mix buses. If you stereo link, that's halved, 8 channel. That 9th possible, air quote on that one, is your main left-right of the console. That's still a mix bus technically, guys. So if all the mix buses, stereo linked ones, are set to pre-fader, you have that stereo main LR still as an additional output. So you could do 9 stereo mix buses from a dedicated monitor console.
Very good.
I will get around why I say that's a possible tentative. Because remember, again, by default, unless we're using ADAT or something weird like that, you only have 16 outputs to work with, which means by default, you would not be able to use that 9th stereo pair. You don't have the extra outputs for it. We'll show you how you can get around that. So I'm going to initialize this so we can go to base start again. We have not messed with anything.
Pay attention to this. Marshall showed me this morning because, you know, on my videos, you'll see me use my scene that resets the X32 edit, but it's actually resetting the board. And I like this.
If you're in Xedit, offline, see it says initialize settings, edit. You can click here, go to mixer. And notice all my changes I had made earlier that we were talking about, those are zeroed out. That's been changed. All my axes are back to normal. If I go to routing, everything's back to normal. It's exactly like the initialize console function if you're physically at the console. It does the exact same thing. Very, very quick. Yes, what Dana has, having a fresh scene that you can do is very nice too, because sometimes this will screw up. I've seen it screw up on consoles. Having a scene that you know of that is literally just blank, fresh, whatever you want to name it, having one of those is still a very useful feature if the initialized console doesn't work. But either methods work, but this is a good method that Dana was talking about. So yeah. Okay, let's say we have dual console. For this example, I'm going to assume, since this is the X32 rack user group, it's an X32 rack with, say, a single S16, which is the most common setup you'll see with an X32 rack typically. That means we are going to have inputs as local 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and 1 through 8, 9 through 16 on AES for that one S16. That means then on AES out, remember, this is my output page, this is my sources up here. What I'm then going to do for AES-B, you'd think I would go here, right? 1 through 8 to 1 through 8. No, we're going to go to 9 through 16 first. Then 17 to 24 is 9 through 16. Then 1 through 8, and 9 through 16 of the stage box. Why did I not go to 1 through 8? Someone asked this the other day in the user forum, and someone said it was not possible. This is possible. How do you get aux channels from front of house, Spotify, Pro Presenter, an MP3 player? How do you get those from front of house to your broadcast console? This is how you do it. The aux remap trick again. On your front of house console, we're talking about front of house routing here. This is your inputs from the local inputs of your console being spit out to that monitor console or broadcast console. This is the digital stage box being spit out over that second console. Now what we're going to do here, scroll over to where we see aux in/talkback. And we want that to be AES-A 1 through 8. That will now send your 6 auxes and your talkback section to your secondary console. So yes, you can share local aux channels between your consoles. Now, what if we were on the second console? What would all of this be? Well, let's reset it out again. And I'll show you how you do that from your second console. Your inputs are then just going to be doop, 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 aux in, remap, 1 through 6. That is all you do. You have now sent all 32 channels plus your aux from one console to the second. That is all you have to do a digital split, except for one feature, which I cannot show in Xedit very well. I can try. Setup. Sample rate. Leave it 48K. If you guys are running at 44.1 for some reason, make sure both consoles are set for the same sample rate. Synchronization. I see so many people say, I've done the routing correct. Why is my broadcast or my monitor console not seeing audio from my front of house console? Because you didn't do that. Only one device can be the clock master. Cannot have multiple clock masters in an AES chain. Doesn't matter how many consoles, 2, 3, you theoretically go to 4 for some reason. Only the console connected directly to the stage boxes should be set as internal sync, aka clock master for the entire AES ring. Every other console must be set to AES ports. If you do not do that, audio will not pass through. The second console will clock error out. You'll see the AES linked, but it will be a red dot up in the top of the screen saying, yeah, I got data, but I don't have clock correctly. Once you do that, audio will pass through perfectly fine. That's all there is to doing dual consoles. How you then set up the consoles for either broadcast or monitor, ultimately watch the first half of this video, and that will tell you how you set it up. But that is how you get from FOH to either your monitor or your broadcast console. It is literally just going into routing and having. So we'll go back to normal. Let's say this is the S16 and X32 rack at front of house, right?
So this is the first console.
This is the first console. You will see this is your normal input stage. Everything is normal. You guys are used to this. Just go to AES, and we're going to go 9 through 16. Remember, bump up by 8.
And that's because we're going to bring the aux ends
right here on the first set
into this. Okay.
Yeah, the reason you have to do it on the first set, again, software hardware limitation of the consoles. Go back to here, aux remaps. You can see I can do local 1 to 2, local 1 to 4, 1 to 6, ESA, card, user in. It will only ever let you do 1 to 6. Have no other options. So if you're going to be doing this digital split and you want auxes, your normal 32 channel count, just bump it up by a block of 8. That's all you have to do. And then you put the auxes on the first block. Yes, I know I wish Behringer would change this, but this is how we have to do it. It's still not that bad. It's a small change, a small mindset. But again, if you guys are using that patch list, write this down and it won't be a problem anymore.
There you go, brother. That's the key to it, is marking out everything that you want to do. Have it in front of you. Go step by step, watch the video, figure it out. It's going to be a piece of cake.
Now, here's the question. How would you then set up if you're doing a monitor console? Like, say, for instance, I'm about to show you my show files. For me personally, I have a full-size X32 at front of house. I have an X32 rack as a dedicated monitor console with 8 stereo in-ears for the band. And you're probably wondering, okay, how am I doing my output routing? Because I have 3 stereo in-ears, wireless, from front of house. I have 2 floor monitors that get used for guests. And then I have my mains. So I have left, right, mono, 3 channels there. We're already starting to creep up on about 10, 12 channels, aren't we? And then I have, physically on the console, XLR, left, right, 1516 is buses, 1516 to my live stream computer. Poof, I am at 12, 14 outputs used. How am I getting outputs from my monitor console? I mentioned this earlier when we went over the stage boxes. There is ADATs. That is how I'm doing this. So let me pull up my rack scene real quick. And you're about to see some routing get very, very confusing, and I'm going to explain it to you guys. I'm about to get some advanced stuff. I load. There we go. You can see we have now got some slightly confusing routing going here.
We got the double V, brother.
Yes. So I'm going to explain what's going on here. Very much so, because this confuses so many people. Inputs, as you can see, is completely normal. But you're wondering, like, wait, didn't tell me earlier to do block up of 1 if I'm doing auxes? Typically, yes, you would. But I didn't do that here because I needed user ins to do something fancy. So yes, if you have user in, you can still do blocks normal. Select user in here, and we can go over here. It's set to 33 to 48 for some reason. I'll show you why when we go to my monitor console routing. Basically, what this is doing is receiving my 2 stereo auxes from front of house. We only have Spotify and Propositor. That's it. The other stereo pair, we'll show you what that's being used for. This is where this gets advanced. So on this console, what that first set is the talkback section from my front of house console. So if I hit one of the talkback buttons on my front of house console, you know it's automatically going to go to the in-ear system that I'm controlling directly. But for the band, unless I send my talkback section from front of house to monitor console, they wouldn't be able to hear my talkback mic. This is how I'm doing it. And then we look at AES out. This is where those ADAT ports come in. On the stage box, my first S16, so I had to do S16s. I have two ADA 8000 units plugged into my ADAT outputs. That gives me an additional 16 outputs now, guys. 32 outputs in my system. AES out 1 through 16 will be going to my stage boxes. 1 through 8 will be a S16-1, the one that is locked into A port on my console. 9 through 16 is the second S16 unit that is connected from B port of the first S16 to its A port of it. Remember that, always A to B if you're daisy chaining snakes. That gives me all the 16 outputs from front of house. Now 17 to 24 and 25 to 32 is how you feed the ADAT ports on the stage boxes. It's even in the manual if you guys go look it up. That means I now have 32. So if you look at this output routing, this is my monitor console. Remember that. I am sending on AES-A 1 through 8, user out 1 through 8. I'll show you in a second what that's for. Go up by a block, and you see 9 through 16 and 17 to 24 is user outs 1 through 16. And then AES 25 to 32 is aux ins. You can ignore that. That's just a standard routing option that was here when I set up this file. What we care about is this. 1 through 8 is user 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and 17 to 24 are my outputs. So that means if I look at my outputs here, there's all of my mix buses. And you can see I got drums, bass, keys, electric, and acoustic currently being used. I have 3 open, and they're all stereo. So that is now being sent out over AES to my front of house console. This is where things start to get interesting. Let's load up the front of house. Now here's the front of house. As you can see, I am using user out to get all of my signals to my monitor console. Ultranet is still there because I am using a P16 system currently. That will be gone once we're fully implemented with this monitor console. It's being put in stages. And then you can also see my outputs are 1 through 8 and 9 through 16 to go to the stage box. But then here it is. AES-B 9 through 16 and 17 to 24 is going to AES 17 to 24 and 25 to 32. So what this is doing, monitor console is sending its outputs over AES to front of house. Front of house is simply redirecting those outputs back to my stage boxes to be outputted via the ADAT connectors. That is all I am doing here. I am literally just rerouting outputs from one console to another to the stage boxes. The front of house console, as far as it's carrying on the signals coming from my rack or monitors, it's just like, oh, hey, I see you. You guys need to go here, and then it doesn't do anything else. That's all it is. But then if you notice still here, I have user in 1 through 2 here. Remember, this is a monitor console. It's a rack unit. Obviously, we don't want to trust the band for everything they're doing. If one of the band members has a problem with their intermix, I, as the front of house engineer and the monitor engineer, need to be able to hear what is going on in their mix bus. But my headphones or in-ears are already plugged into front of house console. Remember, anything we can do to slow down time wasting, we do it, right? Normally, I would have to unplug from front of house, plug into the headphone section of the X32 rack to hear the solo of whatever mix bus I'm trying to affect. With this, I don't. So let me pull back the rack. So here on my user outs for my rack, notice it says on outputs 1 to 2, I have monitor left, right. That's the solo bus, if you guys remember this. So that means I am now sending the solo section of the rack out over the AES link right here to front of house. So pull back up the front of house.
That's awesome, brother. That's absolutely awesome.
It's a fun little trick, isn't it? Most people do not know about this trick. Again, I was telling Dana this. He was asking how I know about all these rating configurations. Once you guys watch this video, yes, I get that some of this is going to be confusing. The X32 routing is insanely complex for what it is for some reason. My advice, go and play. Save your scene that you know works. So you have it. You can go back to it. But then go and play with these routing configurations that we're showing. Play around. Figure out what you can do. Figure out what works. Figure out what doesn't. But no, you always have your scene file to go back to if something broke. That's how I did it. I've played around. I'm like, hey, what can I do with this? Where can I put this? Where can I come from here? Just play around with the console. Don't be afraid to break your routing a couple of times. That's how you get to this level. Just play around with it. Learn your tool. It's like any other tool in any other industry. The more you're hands-on with it, the more you get familiar with it, the better you are going to be as an audio engineer.
Absolutely.
And so we had that user out 1 and 2 from broadcast. Here it is. It's just remapped user in 1 and 2. That's all it is. And if you look at user in 1 and 2, it's AESB 1 and 2. That's how I'm getting my solo from one console back to the other. So since I'm on my scene for my front of house, I go to my OffX layer. You can see it says monitor console right there. So now all I have to do is I leave solo selected on the monitor console all the time. I just click solo here. I now hear it in my headphones that are plugged in front of house. That's it. Now you're probably wondering, didn't you say it was an S16 stage boxes with your monitor console being a rack? There's no physical controls on an X32 rack. Well, efficient. Let me rephrase that. There are some. So this software you guys have been seeing me and Dana has used in his videos, Xedit. I can post a picture in the forum if you guys want to see my setup. Dana has seen it.
Awesome, just so you know.
I have two 27-inch monitors sitting above my booth connected to a mini PC. I have Xedit running real time when I'm mixing. Reason for that is I can see my meter bridges. I can quickly access things I normally wouldn't be able to do on a console faster on the software. For instance, this is a trick for all of you guys that want to get Xedit better. Console, I mentioned earlier, there's a thing called Sends on Fader. Select your bus, then you push Sends on Fader, then you can adjust the level with the input faders. What if there was a faster way for us people that have monitor consoles? Xedit's your answer here. So as you can see, my monitor buses are here. By the way, for people that are wondering how I'm doing that, if you go into connection, they go over to mixer because connection goes first. If you, here it is, GUI preferences.
Yeah.
Go to GUI preferences. Preferences, bus button names. If I unselect that, look at that. The buses just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through 916. If I push the button name, it shows up.
Instantly recognizable. Instantly.
Yeah. So whatever you've done here, so like an Xedit, left click, right click, comes up here, shows you the name of the monitor, the color. That will show up over here if you have bus names on the monitors. Please turn it on. It saves you. But yeah, so I have Xedit Live because, like I said, if I have this selected, watch this fun trick. If I select that monitor, oh wait, why did all these faders suddenly start being selected in colors? The software is now in what's called Sends on Fader mode. I am no longer selecting how these faders go to my main LR. I am choosing this specific bus now. So if you have Xedit open real time while mixing, that means your physical board can stay in house mode all the time. I do not have to make it go into Sends on Fader. I can do it via software, which may again sound like, okay, he's saving seconds. Yes, but saving seconds can sometimes make or break how you mix, depending on how the band you're working with is. And
also the people on the other end of those monitors too, brother. You know, they wanted ASAP, and it's very understandable why they wanted ASAP.
And better yet, get touchscreen monitors. Because yes, XEdit will work with the touchscreen monitor, people.
Absolutely.
My monitors are currently not touchscreen yet. But this software is specifically designed for touchscreen. If any of you guys remember XEdit before the rebrand Surface that it looks like now, go back and watch some of Drew Brashler's original videos or Ascension Worship. You'll see that XEdit looked completely different. Kind of mirrored the physical layout of the console, which is great for training people. The XAir software, their lower-end consoles that Behringer makes, the interface has always kind of looked like this because it was always designed to be touchscreen. They realized quite quickly that it worked better for the X32 line as well. So this is what they updated to. They did a unified GUI for all of their consoles. So yes, touchscreen works perfectly fine. If you have touchscreens, you don't have to worry about a mouse. That is my plan in the future, but I'm not currently doing it. But yeah, so if you select any of these buses, it goes to your sends on fader. And you saw what I did. If you're selected, if you click it again, it's the same as pushing sends on fader again to disengage.
Right, you're right back to the normal operating procedure.
You're back to the main. And then for those of you that are using the mono center channel, please be using this for subs, people. Don't use an aux. If I click that again, yes, it goes into, again, sends on fader for my mono. As you can see, I'm not sending any microphones. I'm sending my track, piano. I am not sending my guitars. I'm sending my bass. I'm sending only some of my drums. Notice that. Kick gets sent, high tom, floor tom, that's it. There's no reason to send overheads to subs or your snare. Those don't send down enough frequency. Okay, overhead, you may want to send a little bit, but that is going to be pertinent on your setup, your stylized taste. That gets into another thing of where music becomes more subjective than objective. But for me, we are not sending overheads to subs.
And something else with that too, guys, just so you know, when you do it on your mix bus, your sends on fader, the power buttons are already on. But I'm pretty sure when you do the mono channel that you have to actually turn the power buttons on after you bring them up for the amount you want in going into that particular bus.
Yeah, he's right. Let's take in a second. Yeah, in 4.6, they changed it. It used to be by default, they were on to the mono center. But they did change it, and it's now off, which makes way more sense. People are like, why it would be off? Because 9 times out of 10, most setups are going to be just a left-right. But people are like, oh, but I got subs. You're going to send that left-right out to your subs, which are going to have active crossovers built in, which is then going to send the low-cut signal up to your mains. Most setups are going to be that way for a lot of people. It's not to get to the semi-advanced people that start wanting to have dedicated control over the sub, where you're going to start dealing with an aux-fed sub or the MC fader. When that happens, you're going to start having to do this, which we're showing, which is sends on fader and engaging. So as you can see, this lit up blue, I am sending. I click it off, it is now not sending. Doesn't matter what the fader is at, that's not on.
Right.
Now I'm sending to the mono fader. And curious question, I'll mention this briefly. Yes, I know it says MC. People are like, why does it say M-C? If you go to setup and go to mixer, panning mode is what you want to look at. This is why it's an M/C fader. There's LR plus mono and LCR. In some cases, yes, you do want to do this. Most places, unless you're in a very specific setup, you're not going to do this, guys. But LCR can be very beneficial for some people's setups because you can put your vocals in the center channel when you're panning. Only put them dead center, it'll only be in the center channel. Then start panning your instruments and stuff to left and right. And only your vocals will ever be heard from that center channel, which gives a lot of clarity for some systems. I have a church that I work with near me that is this. That is why that fader says M-C. Its mode changes based on what you have selected in panning mode. It's either a mono for a sub send, or it becomes a center channel send. But you have to select it here. And then also right here, something else you wanted to see. MC depends on main LR. Please, for the love of your sanity, select this. So many people don't know about this option, and here's what it does. And here's why I say for your sanity, people.
I know, man, but so many people want to get in that debate. Well, I want to operate my subs independently of my mains, and you can still do all this. And I'm laughing at what you said, but I'm agreeing with you 100%.
So what he means by that, people think that when that's selected, that means, oh, I don't have control over my mono fader. No, yes, you do. All it's meaning is this. So if I go to all, let me get out of since I'm fader. You see LR sub. Yes, I still have data control over my sub. I can drop it all the way out. I can push it up more. I can leave it wherever. Typically, those sub levels, once you have it set for a show, you're not going to want to go back and touch it unless it's a very stylized specific show. So typically, you're going to have this fader up. Because if you're on this page, you're not going to see that mono fader. Not there. It's definitely not on the console unless you're in the matrix layer, which why would you be down there? You want to be up on DCAs. So what that main LR have mono follow does is it basically makes the mono a semi post fade DCA. What I mean by that, if I drop the mains to 0, and this option is selected, it does not matter that my subs is still up here. If the main LR is dropped, it will drop both the level of my main left right and my sub simultaneously with one fader, which is very beneficial to help you out in faster mixing. Because if that's not engaged and you are not on your matrix sublayer and you pull your main left right down, your subs will still be sending out bass pressure, which I can tell you sounds very weird being in a room with only subs.
Yes, it does. It'll have every eye turned around looking dead at you, wanting to know all of a sudden where did all that bass come from, and it's been there the whole time. It was just blended in with the main left and right.
Exactly. So that's why you want that follow selected. Yes, you guys still have your independent control with that fader. You can push it more, you can lower it less. All it's saying is if the main LR fader goes to 0, digitally control that sub fader to also go to 0.
And like you said, it's no different than your DCAs. You can go inside of a DCA and you can adjust each individual channel, but then you still have the main left and right of that DCA that will control the overall volume of all the channels.
And since we just briefly mentioned DCAs, I forgot to mention this earlier, guys. Sorry. When I mentioned the difference between DCAs and subgroups, this is a big thing to know about Xedit, people. Dana and I both have Xedit 4.3. That is the current Xedit version, guys. If you do not have Xedit 4.3, you are not about to see the feature I am going to show you.
And it's a good feature.
It is. If you want this feature, go to Behringer's website and download the current version. You will have to have the current version of firmware on your board to use this, by the way, if you're going to use Xedit Live. But you notice on my system, I have my first layer, 1 to 32, 1 to 16 DCA, 17 to 32 DCA, AUXFX, bus matrix, all user 1, user 2, which is what you can configure to be whatever you guys want. By the way, any of these layers, if you click there and hit edit, you can choose what's being shown. You don't have to stick with standard layers. Just quickly mention that. But below user 2, you will see it says DCA 3. That is not showing you guys DCA 3. There's the chair layer. You guys can now see what I have in my DCA. Say I don't want to see that one. I can click here. Now I'm seeing DCA 1, which is my drums. I can go to 2, and there's my vocals. This is what's called DCA Spill. If you're on a full size or a compact, just quickly selecting DCA with version 4.6 or up on the firmware will do the same thing. Your input faders will suddenly change to show the items selected in that DCA. So if you're doing this on the physical console, take your hands off the faders before you select the DCA, because you can either bump your finger pretty hard and change a mix when you didn't want to, Or worst case is knock a belt off the drive unit,
Yes.
which means your motorized faders won't work anymore. So just like when you're flipping layers between layers on the board, hands off fader. It's a safety thing. But this is how you get DCA spill in Xedit. And again, this is only in Xedit 4.3. Guys, if you don't remember which Xedit version you got, I'm going to show you 2 different ways of seeing that.